The aim of this cassette is to show you exactly how I play snooker, and also to improve your own game, whether you're a complete beginner or a fairly accomplished amateur. Now, it's okay me showing you on the table and you just sitting at home watching and saying that looks very, very nice, but whether you want to become good or not depends on whether you're prepared to put in the many hours of practice that are required to become successful. To improve your play requires two things. Firstly, a very, very sound basic technique, and then as much practice as possible. Then and only then, if you've got enough natural ability inside you, you might be able to go the whole way and turn professional. Of course, that doesn't mean to say that practicing has to be boring. What I'm going to be trying to do is make the exercises and practice sessions as interesting as possible, and so you can get the most fun out of actually practicing the game of snooker. If you look at the styles of the top players on the professional circuit, you'll see that there's quite a large variation in the way they play. To a degree, everybody plays snooker differently because everybody's built differently. So what I'll be teaching you is my way of playing snooker. It's not the only way, of course, but I do have what's considered to be a classic textbook style, and I've spent many, many hours analysing my game and thinking about how to develop accuracy and consistency. These are the two key things to successful snooker. If you don't take the trouble to develop a sound basic technique, then you could be severely limited in how far you can go in the game. So it really is worthwhile spending as much time as you can getting the fundamentals of your game right, until they become second nature even. Some things you can improve quickly, but other parts, like controlling the cue ball, can only improve as a result of experience. One of the amazing things about snooker is that you never really stop learning, and that goes for world champions as well. Okay, let's start right at the beginning. If you've never played snooker before, what's the best way to get started? Well, I think it's a bad idea to start bogging yourself down with too much technical detail because you only get confused. What you really want to be concerned with is just hitting the ball and getting used to potting a few, because that, of course, is what the game's about. First things first, what about the cue? Well, if you're serious about the game, you're going to obviously buy your own cue. Firstly, best to buy one that's straight to start with. Wood does tend to warp a bit, so you're going to have a cue that ends up perhaps a little bit bent. But that's not so important as getting used to it, which is the reason why all professional players have their own cue. My cue is an ash cue, as you can see. That has a very strong, visible grain all the way down. Most of the modern day cues are these days made of maple because it's a much easier wood to use these days. As you can see, both these cues are one-piece cues. You'll also see on television a lot of the players play with a two-piece cue these days. There's no difference really, apart from the fact that the two-piece cues are easier to take around the country. And actually one-piece cues are a bit cumbersome. I think if my one ever broke or I had it stolen or anything like that, I would actually use a two-piece cue from then on. Concerning the weight of a cue, most cues average out about 17 ounces. Mine's a 17-ounce cue, and that is a really sort of average weight, and it feels nice in your hand. And of course, when you're thinking about buying a cue, buy a cue that fits your hand. If you've got a very long fingers, you can use a thicker butt. If you've got very short fingers, perhaps a thinner butt. As long as it feels comfortable, that's the main thing. Concerning the length of a cue, it also depends on how tall you are, but most cues are made to 4 foot 9 inches long, 4 foot 10, and that is an average length that you don't really have to need anything bigger than that or smaller. Really, you should look after your cue as best you can. Keep it in a case. Don't lean it against walls because that can make it bend, especially over a long period. And don't leave it in the car if it's a hot day because that can really ruin a cue. But really the main important thing about a cue is really the tip, because that's where the part that hits the ball. I like a tip that's firm but not rock hard. If the tip's too hard, it won't grip the ball properly. If it's too soft, you won't get the right amount of feel when you're playing a shot, especially when you're putting side on. Okay, now we're ready to play snooker. If you're an absolute beginner, there are only 5 really basic points to remember that you'll have to keep remembering all throughout your snooker playing career. Firstly, make sure you've got a nice comfortable stance with the right leg straight and the left leg bent. Secondly, make sure you have a very, very solid left hand, as strong as you can make it, and hopefully get a comfortable V which the cue can run along. Thirdly, make sure the cue is as parallel to the table as possible. That means you've got no chance of putting any side on the ball, hopefully. Fifth point, make sure that the cue
runs backwards and forwards, nice and smooth, no jerking. And the fifth point, when you've played the shot, keep your head well down on the cue. This stops any movement of the body.
Just to remember those points again: a solid stance, a firm bridge, cue parallel to the table with your chin on top of it, a smooth cue action throughout the shot, and keep your head down after you've hit the white ball. Once you feel you've got these points right, you can now start to try and hit the white ball straight without any side, which is a very, very important part of the game. I'm going to try and hit the white ball from the brown spot up over the blue, pink and black spots, hit the top cushion and come back down the spots. A very, very difficult thing to do. Remember all I've told you. The only other two things to remember are, firstly, to make sure that the cue is aiming in the middle of the white ball, and secondly, make sure your eyes are actually looking at the blue spot. If you don't hit the ball in the middle, something like this will happen. The ball will come off at an angle. Depending on how much side you put on, the further off course it will go. If you find you're not hitting the ball consistently up and down the spots, after a little while we'll have to look a bit more deeply into your cueing action. Another useful exercise at this stage is to try potting the white ball into different pockets around the table. Try doing this from different points on the table and see how many you can sink out of, say, 10 shots. We now come to potting balls, because of course that's how you score points at snooker. Lots of people ask me how I pot a ball. Well, of course I've been doing it half my life now and it's second nature to me. But I'm going to try and show you a method of how to pot a ball. Lots of people ask me, is it right to aim for a particular spot on the blue ball, which is in line with the pocket? Well, it's a very, very difficult thing to do that, and it's too complicated. You get very confused because there's lights on the ball as well that are given off from the shade. How I'm going to try and teach you how to pot is by using another ball to start off with. Just use a red ball and line the red ball up with the blue ball and the pocket so that all three are dead in line. Then what I'm going to do is very simply aim with the white ball to hit full ball onto the red ball, and the blue ball should go in. Now, before I play the shot, of course, I'm going to take that one out of the way. I'll just show you how that works. Of course, you can't do that in a match because it's a foul stroke, but after a while, if you practice it enough, you'll find that you become accustomed to the shots without having actually to put the ball in the way. You might think there are lots of different potting angles, thousands even, but I'm going to show you that there are only 5 basic potting angles. Okay, the first of the 5 basic potting angles is, of course, the full ball shot, which is a dead straight pot. And as you can see, the white ball has to completely cover the blue ball in order to hit the ball straight in the line. The other extreme is the very, very fine cut, which is this ball here, and what I've got to try and do is to graze the outside of the blue ball with the outside of the white ball. That's very much a matter of judgment. In between these two is a very important shot to know. It's called the half ball shot. You actually have a definite aiming point here by aiming for the outside edge of the blue ball. And as you can see, when the red ball's taken away, you're actually covering up half of the blue ball. Now we come to the 3/4 ball pot, which which is trying to cover up 3/4 of the blue ball with the white ball. And of course remember, get as low as possible